In this video, we're going to talk about regulation of the digestive system. The digestive system is regulated by both hormones and neural control. And neural just means the nervous system. And there are three phases of the control of the digestive system under neural control. And these phases are the cephalic phase, the gastric phase, and the intestinal phase. So cephalic means head. So this is going to be the brain and senses involved in regulating digestive activity. The gastric phase has to do with the stomach. And the intestinal phase, more specifically, has to do with the small intestine. So first, let's take a look at the cephalic phase. And the cephalic phase of digestive system regulation kicks in before food has even entered the body. So this is really based on sensory stimulation. So things like smelling food, looking at food, or even thinking of food helps to start to prepare your body for taking in food. This is one reason also why if you are watching TV and you see a commercial with food in it, you might all of a sudden start to feel hungry. Or you might not feel hungry and then you start smelling food or you see food and now you are starting to feel those hunger pangs. So these sensory inputs help to increase salivation, so that's saliva production in your mouth. It increases stomach acid production, and stomach acid is needed in order to activate peptidase into pepsin. It also activates smooth muscle in preparation for activation. And smooth muscle, remember that this is the muscle involved in the esophagus, the stomach, and the intestines. So essentially, the brain is getting sensory input that the brain then interprets and sends out signals to the other parts of the digestive system to say, get ready for food, we're about to eat something. The gastric phase of the regulation of the digestive system happens when food actually arrives in the stomach. As food arrives in the stomach, secretions start to increase, and these secretions can be things like acid and peptidase, intrinsic factor, mucus. All of these secretions that come out of the stomach are going to start to be activated and they're going to increase in their output. It also triggers the smooth muscle contractions. And remember that the stomach has 3 layers of smooth muscle. And that's needed to churn and mix the food together with those different secretions to help to digest the food. Things that stimulate the secretions and muscle contractions includes distension of the stomach. Distension just means stretching. So basically, as food enters the stomach, it starts to stretch, and there are receptors that can detect that stretch that then feeds back to the brain so that the brain can tell the stomach that it needs to start secreting more of its digestive secretions and it needs to start contracting muscles to mix that food together. A decrease in pH, remember that the stomach secretes hydrochloric acid. And acid is on the lower end of the pH scale. So as that acid is secreted, it also helps to trigger muscle contractions and the release of other secretions. And just the presence of undigested material. So as food enters the stomach and the body can determine what nutrients are present and what nutrients are being absorbed, and it knows that there's undigested food in there, so it increases the digestive process in order to break it down. The intestinal phase of digestive regulation occurs when chyme enters the small intestine. So this is entering the first part of the small intestine, which is the duodenum. So as that chyme enters the small intestine, it triggers the activation of the pancreas. And remember that the pancreas is connected to the duodenum. So are the liver and the gallbladder. And remember that the liver and gallbladder are involved in producing and storing and secreting bile, which is needed to break down lipids mechanically. And the pancreas secretes different enzymes. It also secretes bicarbonate in order to neutralize the acidic pH of the chyme. The intestinal phase also controls the rate that food is leaving the stomach. So gastric emptying means food leaving the stomach. So essentially, as food starts entering the small intestine, it gets the stimulation to start doing peristalsis. Remember, peristalsis are those smooth muscle contractions. That help to move the material in one direction through the digestive system. This is one reason, too, why sometimes when you start eating something, soon after you eat, you might have to go to the bathroom to defecate. And you're not defecating the food that you just ate. It's that as you're eating more food, the intestines start to become more active. And so the food that you previously ate that has maybe been sitting in the intestines gets the signal that it's time for it to leave the body because you have new material coming in that direction. The activity of the digestive system can also be controlled by hormones. So first we're going to take a look at hormones in the stomach. So we have gastrin, which is the name of the hormone. It is secreted by G cells in the stomach in response to proteins entering the stomach. It helps to stimulate the secretion of hydrochloric acid. Remember that acid is needed to activate pepsinogen into pepsin. And pepsin is a protease, meaning it breaks down proteins. Somatostatin is another hormone that kind of counteracts gastrin. So essentially, once food has left the stomach, so when the stomach is empty, it actually stops the release of hydrochloric acid. There are hormones involved in the regulation of the small intestine as well, and specifically the first part of the small intestine, which is known as the duodenum or duodenum. So the hormone secretin stimulates the pancreas to release bicarbonate, and bicarbonate neutralizes the acidic chyme that's coming from the stomach. Cholecystokinin, or CCK, is another hormone, and it stimulates the pancreas to release some different gastric secretions. And this is going to include things like enzymes. It also stimulates the gallbladder to release the bile that it is storing. Gastric inhibitory peptide actually slows down peristalsis, and this happens in response to fats. Fat digestion takes longer than protein and carbohydrate digestion. So when there's a lot of fat present, this gastric inhibitory peptide slows down peristalsis, which gives the lipids more time to mix with bile and enzymes, and gives it more time for absorption across the walls of the small intestine.